I gave 20 years of my life to that company, 20 years of showing up early, staying late, and putting out fires no one else could handle. When systems crashed, I was the one who rebuilt them. When deadlines loomed and clients panicked, I was the one who worked weekends to deliver. I trained their new hires, mentored managers, and held the tech department together with sheer will. I missed birthdays, vacations, even my dad's funeral, all for the sake of loyalty. I thought it meant something. I thought I mattered. Then one Monday morning, everything changed. The CEO called me into his office with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I figured it was for a promotion or maybe a thank you after the latest crisis I had resolved. Instead, he handed me an envelope. No warning, no heads up, just a handshake and a termination letter. Budget cuts, he said. Nothing personal, but it felt personal. They didn't just fire me. They erased me like I was a disposable tool they'd outgrown. I walked out with a cardboard box and a heart full of disbelief. 20 years of loyalty, and they kicked me out like I was some intern who'd made a mistake. I'd built the very systems they still relied on. Without me, they wouldn't have lasted 5 years. I kept thinking, how do people live with themselves after doing this to someone who gave them everything? At first I was angry. Then the anger turned into focus. I still had my knowledge, my contacts, and my drive. They might have taken my job, but they didn't take my mind. And what they didn't know was that I'd been quietly working on something in the background. Something better, smarter, and more efficient than anything they had. And I had every legal right to it because I built it on my own time, with my own tools. They thought they could replace me with someone younger and cheaper. What they didn't realize was that I was the reason their operations ran smooth. Within weeks of my departure, I started getting calls, errors piling up, systems failing, staff confused. But I didn't answer. I watched silently as the cracks turned into chaos. While they scrambled, I launched my own company with a few loyal ex-colleagues who knew my worth. We offered better services at lower costs. Clients started leaving them and coming to us. Their reputation started to crumble. The CEO who fired me, he tried to reach out, tried to offer me a consulting gig. I didn't even reply. I was too busy building something real. 20 years of loyalty may have meant nothing to them, but it taught me everything I needed to build something better, with people who actually value commitment. I walked into the office thinking it was just another normal day. I had my coffee, my to-do list, and a meeting on the calendar with my manager. Nothing unusual, but the moment I stepped into his office, something felt off. He didn't greet me, didn't offer a seat, didn't even look up. He just slid a folder across the desk like it was some casual thing. Inside was a letter, a cold one-page notice. Your position has been terminated effective immediately due to company restructuring. No warning, no conversation, no explanation, just that. I sat there, stunned, heart pounding in my chest, but I didn't say a word. I looked at him, waiting for him to say more, something, anything. But all he gave me was a quick glance and the worst line I'd ever heard. Nothing personal? And then he looked back at his screen like I didn't even exist. I wanted to ask, after all the years, this is how it ends? But I didn't. I just nodded, calm, silent, watching him pretend I wasn't even worth a goodbye. There was no exit interview, no appreciation for the years I gave, no plan to hand over my responsibilities. Just a bland email later that afternoon from HR saying, "We wish you the best in your future endeavors." That was it. After all I did, working overtime, mentoring juniors, saving the company millions through systems I built with my own hands, this was my thank you. A layoff letter and a boss who didn't have the guts to say it face to face. I packed my things slowly, each item a reminder of the time I gave to a place that never really saw me. The worst part? The younger guy they hired a few months ago, the one I trained, he got promoted the same day I got kicked out. I smiled to myself. They had no idea what they'd just done. They thought they were saving money, cutting corners, but they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I didn't get angry. I didn't beg. I left quietly, calm. But inside, I was already planning. I had knowledge they couldn't buy, experience they couldn't replace, and ideas they were too blind to value. They thought I'd disappear, but I wasn't going away. I was going to build something smarter, stronger, and when they came crawling back, I'd be ready. They underestimated me, but soon they'd realize I wasn't just another employee. I was the reason their systems worked, their teams functioned, their clients stayed, and now I was free. No rules, no red tape, no ceiling, just me, my skills, and the quiet fire they accidentally lit the moment they said, "We're restructuring." They thought I'd leave quietly, head down, defeated, that I'd walk out of that building like just another laid-off worker with nothing but a box of memories. But they forgot one thing. Actually, they forgot something very important, something I had tucked safely away for years. While they were busy replacing me with someone cheaper, I walked out calm, polite, but in my pocket was my thumb drive, and on it, my blueprint, the system I'd been developing for years, the one that had saved their company more than once, the one they thought belonged to them, but it didn't. You see, I never used company time or resources to build it. It was mine. I worked on it at home, at night, on weekends, using my own software licenses, my own ideas. I had protected it carefully, and it was revolutionary, faster, cleaner, more secure than anything they had. They used an outdated version because they didn't want to upgrade or invest, but I had the full version, and now they didn't. When I walked out, no one asked any questions, no exit interview, no real goodbye, just HR shoving papers in my face, asking for my badge, pretending this was routine. But I smiled, knowing they just handed me a golden opportunity. While they celebrated cutting costs, they didn't realize they just lost the only person who truly understood the core of their operations. I went home, opened my laptop, and stared at the code. My code, clean, sharp, efficient, the kind of system that companies would pay a fortune to license. And that's when it hit me. I didn't need them. They needed me, but they'd never admit it. So I decided to show them. Quietly, I reached out to a few contacts, people I knew respected real work, not just office politics. And slowly I started building something of my own. It didn't take long for the first cracks to show. A week after I left, their site crashed. 2 weeks in, their internal communication tools failed. The guy they replaced me with, he couldn't even troubleshoot basic errors. Clients started complaining, deadlines were missed, and panic started to spread. I started getting messages. "Can you just take a look? We'll pay you hourly." I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on building my own brand, offering better solutions, with no bureaucracy, no fake smiles. Word spread. My first client came from a competitor who heard what I was doing, then another, and another. Meanwhile, the company that fired me was bleeding money trying to fix what they broke. They thought I'd disappear, but I walked out with the one thing they couldn't copy: my mind, my work, my system. And as their empire shook, I sat back, calm, prepared, and ready to rise. While they finally realized the cost of letting the wrong person go. I didn't just work for the company. I built it from the inside out. Every wire, every server path, every bit of code running in the background, I touched it. The network, I designed it. The security system, I wrote the protocols. Even the way their vendors connected to our systems, I built that pipeline with my own hands. They called me the problem solver, but they never realized I was the architect behind everything that kept their operations running. And when they let me go, they forgot something huge. I knew every single weak spot because I had created them. I didn't build things to be fragile. I made them strong. But like any architect, I also knew what would happen if one piece failed. I understood exactly how long it would take before backups would overload, when firewalls would panic, or when data transfer limits would choke the system. I didn't need to hack anything. I didn't have to break a single rule. I just watched, because I knew where to look. After they fired me, I expected they'd at least change access points or audit the system, but they didn't. They were careless, too confident. They didn't even change the admin keys I had created. I didn't use them. I didn't need to. I wasn't planning anything illegal, but knowing I could have accessed their most critical systems at any time, that said everything about their arrogance. They underestimated me, and that would cost them. It wasn't long before things started to fall apart. A supplier couldn't connect to their portal because the outdated API I had warned them about finally broke. Then an internal system went down. Not because of sabotage, but because no one else knew how to manage the routing paths I had custom built. They had documentation, but no real understanding. The guy they promoted? He didn't even know the difference between a sandbox and a live environment. I watched them stumble, guessing, patching things wrong, causing even more issues. Meanwhile, I was getting calls, vendors asking if I could help, ex-colleagues frustrated and looking for something better. That's when I started pulling my plan together. I wasn't going to fight them. I was going to replace them. I set up my own consultancy, focused on smarter infrastructure, leaner code, and real results. The same vendors they were struggling with, I signed them. The same clients they took for granted, they came to me after seeing how fast and reliable my system was. I never needed revenge. I just needed to show them the difference between someone who builds to last and someone who pretends to lead. They thought they could erase me, but you can't erase the person who wrote the blueprint. I didn't need to break anything. I just let them try to survive without the one person who actually knew how everything worked. And one by one, they learned the truth the hard way. 2 weeks after they fired me, my phone started blowing up. Calls, texts, emails, nonstop. At first I ignored them. I knew exactly why they were reaching out. Things were falling apart just like I expected. Their system was never built to run on autopilot. It needed someone who knew the structure inside and out. And I was that person. The moment they let me go without any real handover, they basically lit the fuse themselves. They had replaced me with some guy they found on LinkedIn. No real experience, just buzzwords and a flashy resume. He had no clue how deep the systems went or how many custom fixes I had put in over the years. So when the first crash happened, he was completely lost. A major vendor couldn't access the portal. Then their invoicing system glitched, sending out wrong amounts. One client canceled a contract because sensitive data wasn't syncing correctly. Now panic set in. The new guy tried quick fixes, but he didn't understand the logic behind the systems. He was patching things without knowing what those patches would affect downstream. One change broke 3 other things. It was like watching someone try to fly a plane after reading a blog post on aviation. Meanwhile, the management that fired me had no one to turn to. They were watching deals fall apart, data vanish, and clients complain. And suddenly, I was the only name on their lips. The CTO called first. "We just need 5 minutes of your time," he said. Then HR followed, offering triple what I used to earn, just to come back short-term and stabilize things. I didn't respond. Not yet. I was watching, waiting. I needed them to feel it, to really understand what they had thrown away. My inbox was full of desperate messages. Even some of my old team members reached out, saying the new guy had no idea what he was doing. Some said they were thinking about leaving because everything felt unstable. They missed the structure I had built, the predictability I had created. I was tempted to answer, but I waited just a little longer. When the CEO himself sent an email with the subject line, "Let's talk," I knew they were breaking. Their pride had crumbled. Their smooth little restructuring plan had blown up in their faces. And all it took was 2 weeks without me. They thought I was replaceable, that they could hire someone cheaper and smarter looking. But you can't fake experience. You can't shortcut trust. And you definitely can't fire the person who built your foundation, then expect it to hold without them. I didn't need revenge. Their own decisions were doing the work for me. I just let the silence grow while they scrambled. My phone kept ringing, and I kept letting it ring. Because finally they were learning. Some lessons cost a lot more than a paycheck. A few days after the chaos started, I got an email from my old boss. The subject line just said, "Quick call?" The message was short and desperate. "Hey, we're running into some issues. You're the only one who knows this part of the system. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a second, then smiled. Suddenly, the man who couldn't even look me in the eye when he fired me was asking for help. Just like that, the power had shifted. More emails followed. The tone went from polite to panicked. "We're facing a potential contract loss. Please let me know when you're free. This is urgent." It was clear they were struggling. The system they thought could run without me was falling apart, and they didn't have a clue how to fix it. The guy they brought in to replace me was drowning. He couldn't even figure out how to access the custom routing protocols I had created, let alone manage vendor connections or secure data tunnels. I didn't reply right away. I let them sweat. For years, I was the one they leaned on for every crisis, big or small. I gave them loyalty, late nights, missed vacations, all to make sure their systems never stopped running. And how did they thank me? A cold goodbye and a new hire who didn't even understand half the architecture. Now they were finally realizing that you can't just delete 2 decades of knowledge with a termination letter. By the time the third email came in that day, I knew I had the leverage. Not just technical knowledge, but proof of how valuable I really was. They needed me, not just to fix things, but to stop the bleeding. The losses were stacking up. Clients were walking away, and they were desperate for someone who could calm the storm, and I was the only one who could do it. I finally responded, just one line. "What exactly do you need from me?" I wanted them to lay it all out. No games, no quick favors. If they wanted me back, even temporarily, it would be on my terms. I wasn't the employee begging for a job anymore. I was the expert with the keys to a system they couldn't control. The leverage had completely shifted, and they knew it. My boss replied within minutes, practically begging. He admitted things were worse than he let on. Clients were threatening legal action. Vendors were furious. Systems were locking people out randomly, and no one could figure out why. "You're the only one who understands how it all fits together," he wrote. And he was right. They had tried to erase me, but now they were practically chasing me. And I wasn't going to make it easy, because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's letting them realize they destroyed themselves by letting you go. After days of radio silence on my part, they finally made an offer. They wanted me back, but not as an employee, as a consultant. And the rate they offered? Half of what I used to earn. I actually laughed when I read it. Half. After everything. After the system failures, the client complaints, the crashing platforms, and their LinkedIn hire completely fumbling the job, they still thought they could lowball me like that. It was insulting, but I didn't get mad. I got strategic. I waited a few hours, then sent back a single reply. Triple my old rate. I don't attend meetings. I work from home. Take it or leave it. No apologies, no soft words, just straight terms. I wanted them to know I wasn't desperate. I had the upper hand now, and I wasn't giving it up. They replied with hesitation. "That's not really in our budget," they said. "Can we meet somewhere in the middle?" I didn't even answer. I let them sit with it. Because they knew the truth. I wasn't just another IT guy. I was the architect behind their whole infrastructure. Every shortcut they'd taken without me was now costing them 10 times what my salary ever did. And they had no one else to turn to. The consultant they brought in after me couldn't even access the diagnostic tools I had personally designed. One vendor had already pulled out of a contract due to instability. Another was threatening legal action over a missed service level agreement. The pressure was building, and I could see it in their emails. They were no longer talking like bosses. They were pleading like people watching their business burn down in real time. So after a full day, I responded again. Same message, same conditions. Triple my old rate. No meetings. Remote only. Final offer. It wasn't about the money. It was about principle. I gave them 2 decades of my life. I built their system to run smoothly, securely, and with precision. They threw me out without warning, without a thank you. Now they needed me, and they had to feel what it meant to lose someone like me. Finally, they caved. The next email said, "Agreed. Please send over your availability and a basic scope of work. No negotiations, no pushback, just quiet surrender." And I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel joy. I just felt justified. They thought they could break me, replace me, and move on. Instead, they ended up paying 3 times the cost for the same brain they thought they didn't need. They had tried to cut corners. I made sure they paid for every single one. Because sometimes you don't have to fight for revenge. You just wait and let the truth do the work for you. They agreed to my terms without another word. Triple my old rate, no meetings, remote work only. But I wasn't done yet. I sent back a draft contract, a 12-month minimum commitment. If they wanted me to fix their mess, they had to lock in that deal. No last-minute pullouts, no switching consultants halfway through. I made it clear. I was no longer their employee. I was a business now, and this business had boundaries. To my surprise, they didn't even argue. They signed and returned it within an hour. It was clear. They were drowning and needed a lifeline, and now they had to pay for it. The same company that had tossed me aside like I was disposable had just made me the highest paid person on their books, all because their shortcut backfired. I logged in for the first time after being let go. What I saw was chaos. Systems half configured, firewalls wide open, vendor access expired, contracts misrouted. Nothing made sense. The guy they hired off LinkedIn had no clue what he was doing. He had touched things he didn't understand and left everything vulnerable. But I didn't say a word. I just fixed it, quietly and professionally, because now I was getting paid exactly what I was worth. I cleaned up the systems, secured the servers, and rebuilt the vendor pipelines. Slowly, stability returned. Clients stopped complaining. Deadlines were met, all under my guidance. But now from the comfort of my own home. No office politics, no micromanagement, no fake smiles. Just me, my laptop, and complete control. What made it even sweeter was that I had no boss anymore. I set my hours, chose my tools, and worked how I wanted. They needed results, not check-ins. They didn't care how I got it done, only that I delivered. And I did. Better and faster than ever. Because I wasn't working for approval anymore. I was working on my terms. Every time they emailed me with, "Hey, can you take a quick look at this?" I remembered how easily they replaced me. Every time they praised my work, I remembered that cold termination letter. But I didn't show it. I kept things polite, clear, and distant. They had hired a contractor, not a friend. 12 months. That was the deal. For an entire year, they paid me triple to clean up the disaster they created by letting me go. And with every invoice I sent, I reminded myself this wasn't just a job anymore. This was proof. Proof that I had always been the backbone of their success. Proof that loyalty can't be bought, but disrespect will always cost more in the end. It didn't take long for me to realize just how much power I had gained. Within the first few months, my income soared past what I used to make in an entire year. The same company that had tossed me aside now depended on me more than ever, and I was charging them for every second. It was almost surreal. I had gone from being their go-to guy, the one they took for granted, to being the one they couldn't function without. And in that time, I didn't just fix their mess. I built my own empire. I had always worked hard, always put in the hours, but now I work smarter. I manage my time, pick my clients, and control my schedule. And the best part, I didn't need to ask anyone for time off anymore. Fridays? Those were mine. I'd finished my work by Thursday, and Friday was a day for me. No emails, no calls, just freedom. It was something I hadn't had in years, and it felt incredible. The money wasn't the only thing that changed. My life did too. I could go for walks in the middle of the day. I could sleep in if I wanted. If I wanted to take a trip, I could. I didn't need anyone's permission or approval. I made the decisions. I had the leverage, the control, and the freedom I'd always dreamed of. And here's the thing. They didn't even know how much they were paying me. They only saw results. I fixed their systems, kept everything running smoothly, and handled every crisis with ease. They thought they were getting a deal by hiring me at a consultant rate, but they didn't realize I was getting so much more. More than just money, more than just control. I was getting my life back, the one I'd been giving away for years without realizing it. Every time I looked at my bank account, I couldn't help but smile. Not because of the money, but because of how far I had come. The company that had fired me, the one that had discarded me so easily, was now at my mercy. They thought they could replace me, but instead, they made me richer, freer, and more in control of my future than I'd ever been. Now I take Fridays off, not because I have to, but because I can, because I've earned it. I've built my life the way I always wanted to. And every time they send me an email asking me to clean up their mess, I smile. I'm still fixing their problems, but this time on my terms, and that's the sweetest part of all. Revenge isn't always about making a loud, dramatic statement. It doesn't have to involve chaos or shouting in people's faces. Sometimes the most powerful form of revenge is the quiet kind, the kind that makes people realize their mistakes without you ever saying a word. That's exactly what I did. I didn't storm into their office, yelling or make some big scene. I didn't wreck their reputation or ruin their business. No, I didn't have to do any of that. Instead, I let their systems glitch, slowly, subtly, in ways that made things just a little more difficult. The kinds of glitches that you barely notice at first, but start to build up over time. Little issues with the network, small bugs in the software, things that would cause enough frustration to remind them who was really behind the success of their operations. Every time they tried to troubleshoot, I knew exactly how to fix it, but I wasn't giving them the answer. I didn't need to. I let them sweat it out, just as they made me sweat all those years. I watched as the frustration mounted. I watched as they scrambled for solutions they couldn't find. They were searching for the answers I had once provided, but this time, they were on their own. And you know what? They remembered. Slowly but surely, they remembered who built their systems from the ground up, who kept everything running smoothly when it all seemed impossible, who solved their problems before they even realized they had them. That was me, and it was becoming clearer every day. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to shout about how they had treated me. All I did was quietly let them feel the consequences of their actions. It wasn't about destruction. It was about making them remember who had always been there, who had always been the backbone of their success. I became the ghost in the machine, the one who they couldn't replace. And that in itself was the sweetest revenge. Revenge, I realized, isn't loud. It's not about getting even in the most obvious way. Sometimes it's about silently letting the truth sink in, letting them struggle and fight to fix what they destroyed. And when they finally realized what they had lost, it was already too late. They couldn't undo what had been done. The system that I had built was now their burden, not mine. I didn't have to rub it in. I didn't have to boast or taunt. My success, quiet as it was, spoke louder than any angry words I could have said. And in the end, that silence was the most powerful revenge of all. If you enjoyed the revenge story, Like, share, comment, and subscribe to World Revenge Stories, where every tale is a new saga of revenge.